Welcome to the Win, Make, Give podcast. Chad Himes here, joined by my friend Bob Stewart. Bob, how are you today?
Chad, you know I'm excited because we have one of my favorite guests of all time back here, and I'm ready to dive in.
I know you are, Bob, and I was going to tell you before you got too excited to do some of that deep breathing, right? Because the last time we had the pleasure of having Dr. Phyllis Quinlan with us, she taught us about that 7-11 breathing, right? She was talking about emotional intelligence with us. And folks, if you have not heard that episode, you have got to take a few moments, scroll back through the Win, Make, Give history, and go find this powerful interview that we did back on episode 16 with Dr. Phyllis Quinlan, where we talked about winning with emotional intelligence. And Bob, I know you and I have both taken away a lot from that, including that deep breathing of the 7-11 to be more aware.
Yeah, before we're going to bring Phyllis on here in a second, but before we were doing a little pre-interview, and I was telling her, like, I've been using that. From the day that we left there, I actually used it later that day in the car. I don't drive much these days. I work from home. It's, the freeways around here, like, I did 7-11 and it worked. And I was telling Phyllis, I did it with my son just like 2 nights ago. And he was really amped up, and I just slowed down with him, and I did the breathing. I just kind of shut my eyes. And when I opened my eyes, like and Phyllis was saying, like, your aura just kind of calms down. Right. And I mean, he responded to my breathing. And so, yeah, I mean, look, we covered a lot in that last episode. Sure, that just happens to be one that it was something I could implement right away. Right. Like, absolutely. I literally took it from our conversation with Phyllis, and later in the car was doing it. And maybe that's just a sign that I'm not very emotionally intelligent. And so Phyllis's little life hacks are super easy for me to adopt. So I'm excited, man. I'm excited.
I think what we need to start doing is in our podcast recording studios before sessions is maybe as a group, do some deep 7-11 breathing there and see if we can bring all of our energies down. But we were so excited to have her. And if you heard episode 16 and stuck with us all the way to the end, Bob could not stop gushing, and you could understand why, but he could not stop gushing that as soon as we finished recording, we had to reschedule Phyllis to bring her back for another episode. So Phyllis, welcome back to Win, Make, Give.
Thank you so much. I've missed the two of you.
Well,
we had a good time.
You're probably the only person who says that, but but we appreciate it. We'll keep small doses with you. Phyllis, not everyone did hear your emotional intelligence interview that you did with us. So without going back to that, let's give them a who you are. So introduce yourself to our audience for those who maybe didn't get the chance to hear part one.
Sure. So I am a registered nurse, and I've been a registered nurse for 43 years. I'm also a professional coach, and I've been coaching professionally for the better part of 20 years or so, 15 to 20 years. I'm certified by the International Coaching Federation. And, I really am, my whole purpose with my coaching and my entire consulting company is to take care of professional caregivers and family caregivers. I take care of the caregivers, and I try to do so with increasing people's emotional awareness, or emotional intelligence, which I think really builds personal resilience. And of course, working with leaders to create healthy work environments.
Okay.
And that's what we're going to talk about today, Phyllis, right? We're going to talk about healthy work environments and really how to deal with bullies and just disruptive personalities in the workplace, right?
That's what I hope to talk about, yes.
So what this means is, Bob, you will know how to deal with Ben much better after this conversation. Right, he's not here, so I can take the shot. All right, so Phyllis, let me just throw question one right at you, and let's get into this conversation, because anybody who's listened to us interview somebody knows we get about 2 questions, and then it just becomes conversation. So what's the win-win out there in investing the time and effort to creating a healthy work environment?
Well, think of the advantage of people actually looking forward to coming to work. Think of the mindset and the energy and the stamina, the creativity that you can create when people are really looking forward to not just doing the work that they do, but collaborating with their teammates, to have a real sense of teamwork and to really kind of capitalize on the synergy that can happen when people start to work together and create something, the whole being so much greater than the individual parts. Mm-hmm. It's a way to not just attract talent, because when people love going to work, that word is going to spread. but you're going to retain talent, which is also important, and when we think about succession planning and, growing from within, you want to do that from a place of a healthy work environment. You really don't want to do that from a place of toxicity because it's just not sustainable. And we know this now, that healthy work environments are just essential to us all really sustaining ourselves and being ready for what's ever next that's going to roll up to our front door.
Phyllis, okay. I think I would have a hard time believing there's anybody in the audience that would disagree that a healthy work environment isn't a good thing, right? Like, I don't think anybody's sitting around going, no, I like showing up with my boss who's a real ass and he just drives me into the ground and he's
And we're not talking about you.
But so, like, we all, I think this is one of those things where like 99% of people are going to be like, yeah, except for the bullies, right? But so what, like, as I look at my company, as any of our listeners look around in the, like, what is a healthy work environment? How do I know if I'm in one or not?
Well, it's a great question, Bob. So, if you go to what you would consider the business experts out there, Harvard Business Review, and I would really go to the American Nurses Association or the American Association of Critical Care Nurses, who put out pillars of a healthy work environment. There's a Dr. Christina Maslock, who also does a tremendous amount of work in healthy work environment. Everybody pretty much says the same thing. They may label it differently, but they pretty much come down to, clear communication, true collaboration, thoughtful leadership, adequate staffing, and essentially those things, true recognition, not just the occasional pizza, but, where, somebody might be doing an extraordinary job and maybe you want to split the tuition on them going to a class to make them, help them even do a better job or something along those lines. And, it's really important that you have those things. And I truly respect what the authorities have put out there already, and quite honestly, use it probably every week in my own practice. The thing that they do not discuss, and that I think is the missing element, is really addressing disruptive behavior within the workplace. And I don't think you have a true healthy work environment until you've adequately assessed and managed the disruptive behavior.
That's some great stuff over there, Phyllis. And Bob, you're taking notes. I know you're always taking notes.
Yeah.
You definitely are the better of the two of us when it comes to that over there. So quickly recap, what were those pillars that Phyllis just gave us that we need to pay attention to?
Clear communication, true collaboration, thoughtful leadership, adequate staffing, true recognition, and then addressing disruptive behavior, which is Phyllis's kind of addition. Those first five are kind of universally thought of as things that describe a healthy work environment. But Phyllis believes that addressing disruptive behavior is another element in there, in addition to the communication, the collaboration, the thoughtful leadership, the adequate staffing, which we have that challenge in our own business right now. Adequate staffing, it burns people out, right? And then true recognition. It's a good list. Should we dive in a little bit?
Go into some of these a little bit before we then add on Phyllis's, powerful addition to it. And Phyllis, can we agree, as I kept bringing up during the emotional intelligence one, because I always want to make sure that we're talking to a lot of business owners, business leaders through our podcast, but we're also talking to stay-at-home parents. We're also talking to people who think, hey, I got my business handled pretty well, but boy, my family, all this stuff's applicable at home. Would you agree?
Undoubtedly. And there's a methodology that I use to do the drill down on each one of these pillars, if you will. And it's worked very, very well so far. And what I use is a method called Appreciative Inquiry. So Appreciative Inquiry is really the change management methodology for the 21st century. So it's kind of like, let's not throw the baby out with the bathwater. Let's see what's working and then see if we can't appreciate what's working and find out why it's working. And then when we identify things that are not quite working, maybe we can use some of the things that are working to improve what's not quite working. So when I do a healthy work environment drill down with any of my clients, let's just say
let's do a short version with us right now.
Exactly. Skilled communication. So I would create 3 columns, and I would say to the participants, and you want all your stakeholders in that, participating, well, what's working? What's working about, our communication system? And you're going to be very surprised about what's working, because people don't usually fully appreciate how much the staff is paying attention to what's working.
Okay.
And you might say, geez, I didn't think that was working that well, only to find out, yes, it is.
Right. So you're like that weekly email we send out, somebody you might think, this is a pain in the butt. We do it. But 3 or 4 people on the team are like, I really love being that weekly email that gets everybody on the same page. Or okay.
Exactly. Or texting, or, it depends on, exactly your group and what you can do as far as, privacy and encryption and all that other stuff is important. But you'd be surprised you'd find out what's working. The next column is, well, if you had a dream, all right, what would communication in our department look like? And you really want to have that psychological safety that everybody can just brainstorm. Nothing's stupid, nothing's crazy, nothing, that'll never work. We don't have that kind of attitude in appreciative inquiry. You just simply, let's just, throw it up there.
Okay.
And then, so once everybody creates their dream, the last column would be, what's holding us back from living the dream? And you're going to find out, where are the gaps and what are the barriers? And more than likely, what you're going to find out is that it's going to be systems that are broken, and it's going to be people that you need to reinforce relationships with.
Okay.
So, if you're trying to communicate, nursing with pharmacy, and, some of the nurses are calling, which is totally clogging up pharmacy. And some of the nurses are using the computer, messaging system. And then some of the nurses are doing both because they like to wear a belt and suspenders, to make sure that you get the message. That tells me that you have a broken system. Do you know what I mean? Like, no one's using a consistent system, and everybody's doing double work. And on the receiving end, it's kind of jamming their communication log, because it's not just the sender of a message, it's the receiver of a message. And now everybody's getting irritated with one another. And, if that nursing, calls one more time about that, and then you start to get a little irritation, and it's not team building. So you really want to smooth those things out.
Do you think those, like, when you're practically doing this with an organization, because you said we look at what's working, then we what's our dream? What would this be like in a perfect scenario, right? And then what's holding us back? Do those, during that, what's holding us back from achieving the dream, is that where kind of the issues that, people want to, Jenny always does it this way, or, like, I'm assuming that's the stage where the issues come out, right?
Well, it's the stage where you start to get the action plan comes from that last column of what's holding us back. Because if there's a definite barrier, or something is truly broken, or we've been doing it this way for years, but nobody can tell you why we're doing it this way. Mm-hmm. This becomes your action plan. So you don't even have to figure out, well, what are my next steps? Your next steps are in that last column. What you then have to do is, not to be too biblical here, but you render to Caesar the things that are Caesar's, that if it has something to do with security, well, then you bring security in the room. You don't try to figure it out all yourself, and you don't try to make one department figure it out. You bring the stakeholders in, and you say, we have a trouble with XYZ, and we need you to partner with us to fix that. And XYZ might come with the attitude of, well, why should I stop doing what I'm doing to help you fix your problem? But what we find out 9 times out of 10 is that if you stop what you're doing and collaborate with the department to help fix that problem, you're actually helping to fix a problem within your department as well. So it's a real win-win there.
And so, I mean, it seems like a pretty natural next step to, like, true collaboration, right? Like, the communication, I think, is this, like, it's this umbrella that sits over our whole organization, right? Like, we got interdepartment communication, we've got communication between departments, but collaboration. Let's talk about that one next. So, I mean, is it a
Yeah,
similar
so
approach? Like you work through this, what did you call that? The change management
it's
methodology.
right. So appreciative inquiry is the change management methodology for the 21st century, in my opinion. And because there's always something that is working, and you really want to start from a place of, create momentum, create a positive sense. Don't say everything here, is awful. Throw everything out, which is usually everybody else's old hard work and very insulting. And that we'll start fresh. Well, if you're not respecting what I did before against all odds, why should I buy into you now?
And that's not practical anyway, right? Like, let's just rip out all the way we communicate or all of the collaboration we've ever done before, and let's just start from scratch. Like, we have a business that's running, or a hospital we have to still.
Why would you want to take on that time, effort, and expense without finding out what's indeed working, so that you can use your money, time, effort, resources appropriately to address what's not working?
Yeah. Okay, so we do this with collaboration.
Mm-hmm.
Talk a little bit about that. Like, is that
what I love about the collaboration piece is that I usually say, so how are we getting along with? And you find out who are the key players within a department. Okay, so if you're working with, let's just say, professional development, IT is going to be a key player. Maybe the print shop's a key player. The people who run the learning management system might be key players. You want to make sure that they're all in there. But I think the first way to really start with not just what's working with true collaboration, but really, create a little bit of a buzz and say, does anybody deserve a shout out? Joe in IT, every time you call him, oh my God, he goes the extra mile. He's just a joy. You pray to God Joe's picking up on the phone when you have to call IT, and then it becomes incumbent upon the leader who has, conducted these healthy work environment drill downs, then to make sure you reach out to Joe's, direct report and you say, by the way, just want to let you know, talking with my team, we're talking about true collaboration, and Joe's name came up over and over again. And if you have something like recognition points, or you have some kind of way to flag or recognize a colleague, that's the time to do it and say, we were doing this and your name came up, and geez, thanks. You're the unsung hero of IT. And, and you can see the relationship building piece to this, and as I said to you guys last time, you're going to live and die by the quality of the relationships you have at work. And that's one of the reasons why you want to have that healthy work environment, and you really want to minimize that disruptive behavior, because unfortunately there is going to be those souls who really don't want to get along, that they rather have it be a power struggle. They rather have to, have some animosity between that. I'm not quite sure how that serves them, but for some reason it does.
I really want to get into that, but I want to keep going down this list again, just to get some of the points that you're pulling off of it for us on this 30,000 foot overview.
Right.
So Bob, number 3 on that list was
thoughtful leadership?
Okay. And
which seems challenging, Phyllis, because we're basically going to the leaders and being like, are you being thoughtful? And I'm assuming they're all going to be like, yep, I'm thoughtful. I'm thoughtful.
Yeah.
I'm thoughtful.
Well, it's not just thoughtful, Bob, it's authentic. Okay. So, and here's where that emotional intelligence piece comes in, because if your leaders aren't emotionally intelligent, there is absolutely no way they can be authentic. And they cannot make a connection with their staff if they lack that personal authenticity. So here's where, the question then becomes, when you hear all that's going on within your work environment, healthy or not, are you going to create the psychological safety within your team for them to come forth and be transparent with either what you know or what you should know and don't know? And then the big question is, how are you going to react to that? Are you going to say, okay, well, obviously I need to do some 7-Eleven breathing because right now I'm really upset. And then realize that you're not going to take it out on the people who are trying to raise your awareness or trying to explain to you that we don't have an environment that supports the missions and values of the department, that we really need for you to be a champion with us, and of course partner with human resources and executive leadership to create that atmosphere where we can all thrive. So when we talk about, leaderships, especially in creating healthy work environments, their mandate, their imperative, if you will, is to create the psychological safety so they can hear it, and then have the emotional intelligence to accept it and work it and not realize that it's personal, but that we now have to drill down and be so thankful for their staff in being trusting in you because you are authentic and are showing up each and every day to partner with you to create the best environment possible.
That's going to be a challenge for a lot of leaders out there to be able to be all of that. I think, Bob, we're blessed, right? Having Ben as a leader to us, he's got that one covered.
But that's been for him, I think, a development over time.
Absolutely.
I'll give you. Him and I have this one disagreement. I don't know how this close to thoughtful leadership, but like when we have issues with our software, he wants to just fix it and then kind of sweep it. And I always want to go out and like address it and be like, I know there's an issue. We're working on it. We're fixing it. So we have these like little things that even to this day, Chad, which are just a little bit different, but you are correct. He is a thoughtful leader. He's developed that, I think, over time.
Absolutely. That's where I was going to go on that.
This is an important point, Bob. Don't confuse style with substance.
Okay.
Because if the substance is that Ben is listening and working on what you're suggesting, if his style is a little bit different from yours, that doesn't matter.
Yeah.
The substance of the fact that he's listening and getting it done is what's important.
It's good.
And what I wanted to make sure everyone gets is, because we talk about Ben, he's a fantastic leader. And Bob, you brought that up. It's developed to become that way, because we've shared on episodes in the past when I worked with Ben years ago, he wasn't the same person he is today as a leader. And as Phyllis is saying right now, we might not always agree on style, but it's that he's there and he's leading and he is authentic in that. All right, so let's keep going on this. The fourth thing on there, I think this was the one that made my eyes kind of like perk open a little bit, because the first three were really, really obvious on this healthy workplace. But Bob, number 4 was?
Adequate staffing.
And that can go both ways, right, Phyllis? I mean, we could be overstaffed to a point where people, and then sadly, we can be understaffed either because we can't keep up with the need or because we're just trying to save money as the leader, that we're not providing the opportunity. So talk to us a little about this adequately staffed situation.
So there's two things, and I'm going to give the example using my director of nursing background. Okay. Sure. So, one of the things that kind of plagues a lot of healthcare organizations is that most of your staff, because most of your staff is going to be full-time. And that means, and we also work weekends. So it's a 24/7 operation, right? 365. Right. So what can happen is that you kind of clump your staff on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, and then you don't have the staffing numbers that you need, or the same staffing numbers you need on the weekends. So when you're looking at adequate staffing, one of the first things you want to look at is, do you have, especially if you are more than Monday through Friday, if you're a Monday through Friday, hang on just a minute, I'll make a point for you too. But if you are a 7-day or a 6-day-a-week operation and you've got to cover weekends, you really have to have an adequate or a balanced mix of full-time and part-time employees so that you have people on one weekend and you have people on the next, and you're not creating a pyramid on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. Okay, so that you're flattening that pyramid, so that if you're looking to have 5 people on every day, if you have a mix of part-time and full-time, more than likely you're going to have, 4 to 5 people, that adequate staffing piece. So you really want to make sure that, everybody would love to give everybody a full-time job, but it may not work for your organization. It may not work for your mission and values and what you need to get done. The other piece, is it's not just throwing numbers at staff. Okay, well, we need more of this. Well, let's drill down on that. Why do we need more of this? What's the issue? So that it's not just number staffing, it's adequate staffing, meaning you are hiring adequate amounts of the role that is needed. So long ago and far away, I'm on one of my dementia units in a long-term subacute care facility that I'm working at. And the nursing assistants, and the reason I'm up there in the evening is because we have a lot of falls or occurrences in the evening time, especially from dinner to like 10 o'clock. And I'm trying to figure out what's up with this. And the nursing assistants are saying, well, you see, they're demented, so they have behavioral problems. They're confused. They try to get up. We have to watch them. And I can't get the bathing done. I can't get the nighttime routine done and all of the things that get done. We need more certified nursing assistants. Okay, let me go up and take a look. So now I go up and take a look. And what I see is, well, we definitely need more staff. But I don't think we need certified nursing assistants. I think we need therapeutic recreation people to engage the people who have behavioral and dementia units while the certified nursing assistants are doing their job in doing the personal care of the residents. And you're going to keep everybody engaged and monitor them over here with a different type of staff, definitely more staff, but more staff that's actually going to address the issue that's the problem why people are falling.
So in the sports world, because, we like to go to the sports world, it's looking at my football team and saying, well, we need more offense. Don't go get me more defensive players.
Right.
I need people who are here. I need more.
And specifically, I need like this position right here, right? So, I mean, it's really drilling down into the like.
Exactly.
And sometimes, Phyllis, just from your example there, sometimes even the people on the ground think they need something that isn't necessarily what we need, right? Like,
and that's adequate. That's really true, And so this was one of the things that was annoying when we first all got computers as management and leadership in healthcare, is everybody thought, and they did away with all the secretarial staff. Okay, now hang on a minute. I have to monitor my staff. I have to be out there. I have to engage with the patients, engage with the families. I have to do the interpersonal thing with all the different departments. And you took away my secretarial staff? Well, you have a computer. Yeah, but there's 24 hours in a day. So, so maybe in several organizations, my solution, or at least my suggestion of a solution was, you need to bring back the old-fashioned secretarial pool. Where you have a group that's dedicated to this particular group of people to support whatever it needs. And then maybe once they get it up and running, things are fine, but you can't ask everybody to do everything simply because there's a computer.
Chad, in my day-to-day job, right, in real estate, we see this all the time where, we have these teams, Phyllis, and they'll think, oh, we got so many clients, so many leads. So it's this big business. We got to hire more agents. But the reality is their agents are doing these jobs that could be filled by a virtual assistant. So in our world, a lot of real estate teams will use a virtual assistant, and they'll get help from overseas at a really affordable cost to do the things that the agents are taking a bunch of their time up doing that could actually free them up to help the clients that aren't being serviced right now. But they don't need another real estate agent, right? They could actually bring in, just like, like you're talking about, that admin level support to help free them up to have the time to do it. So, I mean, what we're talking about here, it's not necessarily we're understaffed. We just need more people. I think most companies would love to have another body, right? But it's like, are we getting the right people? And then are those people that we bring in kind of focusing on the right things so we could potentially free people up, like your example with the certified nurses, to go and do the job they should be doing when the things maybe somebody else could be doing could be covered by somebody else, not a certified nurse. That's
exactly right. First of all, it's not only annoying to the person who's trying to be everything to everyone. And again, you're creating these added stress in a less healthy work environment. But just from a cost benefit return on investment point of view, do you actually want to pay a registered nurse in this day and age, because we're not cheap, all right, to do something that someone who's equally respected but commands less salary? Do is that what you want to do? Is that really getting the best return on your investment?
Yeah.
It's going to be that, again, taking this, folks, those of you out there listening who want to take this home as well, that's adequate staffing at home. Now, it's interesting. We're not necessarily hiring, our spouse or anything like that, but it's maybe you need a tutor to be there to help with the kids, and it's that adequate staff position in the house. Or maybe you do need someone who's a personal shopper or a chef or something
Chad,
like that.
I've shared this story before on when we lived in Arizona, I thought I was going to be the pool guy, and that lasted for about 3 months, Phyllis, and then I fired myself. I realized I was a horrible pool guy. Every time I went out there, just, I never kept it clean. Like, it just, not for
And
us, that was
folks,
a
if you've
staffing
seen him in the
position.
traditional pool guy outfit, you also know
Yeah.
why Bob should not have been
That's
the
right.
pool guy.
That's right. This pasty,
Right?
you
His
don't want
wife
this
wanted
pasty
to
thing.
hire a better
Yeah.
pool boy for that
I just
person.
love working with the two of you.
You don't want this
I
pasty thing out by your pool, Phyllis. I guarantee you that.
All right, so Bob, what's next on the list now that we've hit on that? Because I really want to get to the one that Phyllis added, right?
Let me just refer to working at home, because you said this was, home things.
Sure.
Okay. So, one of the things, if you're doing a healthy work environment and now your life has changed and you're working remotely, and you think about communication, let's just go back to number one. What's working? All right. If I had a dream, what would that be? And I bet you 9 times out of 10, your gap or your barrier column is going to say, I don't have enough Wi-Fi. I need an upgrade in my computer. And now you can kind of look at your finances and somewhat justify an investment that you probably weren't thinking about, or maybe was low down on a wish list, that now, because you're working remotely, is becoming essential.
Phyllis, if you can help me get rid of Comcast and get some other cable, I don't care who it is, just let me know immediately and I will get rid of Comcast.
We'll all be behind you on that one, Bob. All right, what's
Right.
the next one on the list?
True recognition. And
Yes.
I'd be curious, recognition, but you say true recognition. What does that mean? What's the difference? Or we all get what recognition is. But.
So the true recognition is, and again, this comes to leadership authenticity and leadership visibility. Okay, so you want to be that leader that's rounding, not just about if in healthcare, your patients and their families, okay? But let's say in business, you just don't want to be rounding about how systems are going and how people are engaging and maybe the clients. All right. But you want to be looking at your workers. So you want to get a sense of, who's really the solution person in the team, who's really investing a lot of themselves and saying, so I took a risk and I want to show you whatever, or who really went the extra mile. Now, that could have been the extra mile for helping somebody out during COVID. Maybe that person maybe one of their colleagues got sick or a family member got sick, and somebody did just something just really like a good human being and took a collection and they sent a whole bunch of pizzas over so somebody didn't have to, cook one night, whatever. But you recognize the person in a manner that says, I've been watching you and your efforts are appreciated. And you're such a vital part of this team, that, you're really showing us, we can't do without you. Do you know what I mean? And we just want to say thanks, not just thanks for your talent, but thanks for being a good person. And that shifts everything. When people feel valued, not just for what they do, but who they are, you're creating loyalty and you're creating buy-in. And if that is a recipe for sustaining anything.
How I always worry here, I don't know if it's a worry, but about the authentic versus inauthentic there, right? It might not feel very authentic to somebody for you to I don't know. I just worry that it doesn't land like it should. How do we make sure that it feels authentic to the person receiving it?
So you don't always have to make a big deal out of it, meaning show and tell in front of the group. You know what I mean? So that people misinterpret and people want to think that this actual recognition is all about you, the leader, being the good guy or the good gal, and not about Joe, who's doing the great job.
Yeah.
You may want to do it privately, and you start up a conversation with Joe and, how was your weekend? Oh, it was a great weekend. I actually got a chance to take the family out to dinner. I went to my wife's favorite place and she was thrilled. Oh yeah, where's that? Oh, it's, ABC restaurant. Oh, I've heard about that place. It's a good place. And now you're waiting for an opportunity. You make a little note for yourself, however, you trigger your memory. And, when Joe does step up and he really does deserve that, maybe you get a gift card at that restaurant and that tells Joe that it's personal. That, shares with Joe that you were listening, you were engaged in that conversation. And not only do you appreciate what Joe did, but you were thoughtful enough to say, I hope I remembered that this is your wife's favorite place because you've been putting some extra time in, and I'm sure she's been holding the fort. So this is more for her, Joe, than for you. Give my compliments to your wife. I mean, they're going to love you.
That's what I hear there is like proactive. Like somebody that's really focused on true recognition is looking for proactively those things that later they can use as a thank you, basically, right? Like,
Bob, how does Ben tell you did a great job? What does he send you?
shoes.
Yeah, right. We know, get you shoes, get you a hat that you don't have in your collection, right? We all know that. I mean, how many of our listeners have actually even, and this is not a plug, right? But how many times have we walked in to record and there's been a gift box that's shown up and someone got you something specific and me something specific, and because they've heard over the podcast and they've been like, oh, I know if I send this, it's going to matter, to each of us.
I like that. That's how you be authentic, is you really listen for what might be, an impactful recognition or thank you gift. It doesn't even have to be a gift, right? I mean, it could be something where
know their love language.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Right. If we've talked about that on episodes in the past, the ones who literally just want a pat on the back, who want you to say it in front of the group, who want you to get their car washed while they're sitting there working and don't even realize it and come out and their car's been washed for you. So that's awesome. All right. So we're flying along here. I mean, I'm watching the clock go because that's also part of my job to make sure this doesn't turn into a 3-hour episode for us and all that. And we haven't even got to what brought us all back together again, because we asked the one question and boom, Phyllis gave us such a powerful answer. But Bob, the next thing on the list is that sixth thing that Phyllis has added, which was
addressing disruptive behavior.
So Phyllis, let's talk about disruptive behavior. Let's take the last 10, 15 minutes of the conversation here. Let's talk about what are those disruptive things? How do we look for them? How do we deal with them? How do we handle them so they don't really impact work more than they have to?
Right. So you're going to find that this is the subtle pillar, okay, that people don't like to talk about behavior because we're not really well trained, regardless of your profession, and how to handle conflict and disruptive behavior. All right. Even those of us in healthcare back away from it. So what I've come to find is that there are two types of disruptive behavior. There is chronic incivility, and then there is true bullying. And when I went on a 10-city tour talking about this from one of the professional nursing organizations, when I spoke to the nursing leadership, we pretty much decided that by and large, 85 to 90% of the staff show up every day, ready, willing, and able to do a good job and to work in a collegial manner. That's terrific. The other 10 to 15% don't, and they engage in what we call disruptive behavior. So let's go with the 85% show up each and every day looking to do the good job. What we then decided was that of the 15% that are engaging in disruptive behavior, the larger proportion, 10 to 12%, were engaging in chronic incivility. And the smaller portion, 3 to 5%, were engaging in pure bullying or true bullying.
Okay.
So I describe chronic incivility as, that guy or that gal, they just can't get to work on time. They just can't complete their deadlines. They can't get back from break. They're always on their phone. You finally get a break and you're going to go in the break room and you're going to try to have a cup of coffee, and all they want to do is bend your ear with the latest saga in their life. They are just so low on the emotional intelligence scale that if they call in sick, everybody's like ready to celebrate. and it's that.
Can't we just fire these people?
Well, in some organizations you can, and in some organizations you can't.
Yeah.
Then we go back to that adequate staffing, Bob, and we still need them at this point.
So in this case, the question is, for chronic incivility is the irritation, the body language at the meetings and the eye rolling and the sophomoric behavior and, just endless. It just drains the energy out of the team, and it creates a disruption that causes people or raises the potential that people are going to commit errors. And in healthcare, that's a hefty issue, because on the other side of that error is a patient. Mm-hmm. So, you really need to address these folks. And by and large, what we do, because they're so annoying, is that we ignore them.
Yeah.
And a lot of times, the 85% are watching leadership, and here's where it becomes a leadership imperative. They're kind of saying, well, what about this don't you get? Do you realize that, we could, you're holding us to this higher standard and you're letting this one slip? And, and that's it. And the person may be a good performer. So it's the old story of, he or she is always doing something, but when they work, they really do a great job. Well, what is that? The person's always calling in sick, but when they're here, they're terrific. Well, tell me how that helps the team. Because that kind of mentality just says to me, you don't want to really address it. These people are not targeting individuals to make them vulnerable or to make them lose confidence in themselves or to be abusive. They are just draining the lifeblood out of your organization day in and day out. They're like energy vampires.
Mm.
Oh,
okay.
Great term.
And you just, you're more exhausted after you've spent 10 minutes with them than you were, if you came in without any sleep to work. The other smaller proportion I call bullies, and in healthcare, I call them narcissists with a license, because the personality of a bully very closely aligns the personality of what we call narcissist, which is a personality disorder. It's not a mental illness. It's a personality disorder. It's kind of like hyper-neurotic. Okay. And someone who is a narcissist truly believes that everything in the world revolves around them. And they will take on a new person in the organization, and they'll, pretty much not in so many words, but they will say, I'm the most important thing in this department, and you better know it, because I will make your life miserable if you don't bow down and whatever. They have very fragile egos. And the piece that is tricky here is that I've never met a stupid narcissist, and I've never met an ugly one. So their stock in trade is that they're usually extremely good at what they do. They have a high skill set, and they are personable and charming. But you have to understand that charm is more of a predator charm than it is to be engaging, because narcissists only have relationships based on usefulness. If I think I can use you, I'm going to, shimmy on up. And as soon as I don't need you, I'm going to kick you to the curb like third period French.
Phyllis, can this person change? Like they're a narcissist. They're a narcissist, right? I mean,
that's exactly right. And I'm so glad you said that, Bob, because if you have a true bully, someone who is working in the shadows under the guise of plausible deniability, they say something that's intimidating. They say something that is, veiled threat. They make the person's life miserable. And then when the manager comes and calls them on that behavior, oh, gee, that person misunderstood. I was just trying to do this. I was trying to do that. They better grow a veneer. They're never going to make it. It's always the other guy. And they always work in the shadows of plausible deniability.
Okay, so Bob mentioned it earlier with these 15, 20% of the people, 15%, hopefully if a lot less, chronic incivility, or the bullies, the people who fit into this. Clint Swindoll, who we've had on the podcast, he has our oh yeahs, our okays, and then our oh no's. So these are those oh no people in the organization, of course. Are there any winning strategies other than you're fired?
Yeah. So it depends on, the time and effort you want to invest in this person. And that, of course, should be based on their performance. Okay. But rule number one, and I want to make this perfectly clear, do not take on disruptive behavior by yourself. That could really be a real problem for your career and your reputation. If you think you have a problem, and more than likely, once you think you have it, you really have to do some documentation, anecdotal notes, if you will, of, times, places, incidences, and some just-in-time coaching that you gave that person. But you have to start to build a case to take to human resources and executive leadership to say, Houston, we've got a problem. And there has to be a coordinated action plan developed between executive leadership and human resources, or I promise you, especially when dealing with the narcissist, they will turn it around to you victimizing them. And it will be you on the way out and not them. But to Bob's point, there is no remediating a narcissist. All you can do is document Put some training in there, do as much as you can with just-in-time coaching, but document until it becomes glaringly apparent that this person is not living up and serving the mission and value of the department.
But you had said that narcissistic person, that bully, they're usually going to be smart. They're probably good producers in your organization. They're probably getting away with what they're getting away with because of they're bringing in clients, or they're closing deals, or
Right.
they're getting great 5-star reviews from the patients or the
Right.
customers and stuff. So
Right. So the question
challenge
then
that for me,
becomes,
because I want those people. I just don't want them to
Chad,
be
well, here,
jerks.
real quick, Phyllis.
well, do you really want those people? Because are you really being held?
Okay, I
by
want the
your-
results of those people. I just don't want the personality of those people.
Right.
But if
The
they're
problem
bringing
is
me
they're
great
sucking
results,
the life out of the whole rest of the organization.
Well, they are sucking the life out of that. And probably the chronic incivility people are taking up so much of your time and trying to manage their poor behavior and the fact that they just, pissed off yet another customer with their, offhanded remarks or lack of sensitivity or something. And now you're doing some damage control, that you're not paying attention to the 85% that are showing up each and every day. And if you put some time and effort in them, you won't need the narcissist.
I think of I'm probably going to get this wrong. It was either Sprint or T-Mobile fired like 5% of their customers who were responsible for like 85% of their inbound complaints every month, right? It's this idea that like you get rid of the cancer in there so that you can focus on all of the healthy organisms in that ecosystem, right?
all right, Bob, but let me put this back at you. What about Dennis Rodman? Was he not the ultimate narcissist? Was he not the look at me? Was he not the bully on the team? Was he?
Yeah,
but
I mean,
boy,
look, in that scenario, you've got a bunch of ultra, like you could probably have a narcissist in your organization if the other 12 players were all ultra type A, high dominant personalities, right? They would be able to, it would be okay that you have this person. He wouldn't wreck the other performers. But if you had a bunch of people that were susceptible to that bullying or that were being, that it created a toxic environment for them, Chad, then you have to do something, right? Even in his scenario, Jordan had to go get him from Vegas one time, and like the top alpha dog had to step up and grab him and say, hey, right? But if he was on other teams where he ruined the team because they didn't have Jordan and Pippen.
So
now, Phyllis, let me
you could give Dennis an elbow under the basket and say, oops, but you can't do that at work, right?
There you go. Good point. All right. So Phyllis, let me ask you this question about this as we're getting near the end of this. And chronic incivility, I think, should be pretty obvious. You've gave us some great, that person who's always running a few minutes late, that person who's always on break, twice as long as they should be. And that person you're always waiting for at the meeting. That's obvious.
Right.
These narcissists, is it always easy to identify them? Because they're probably walking around with a big smile on their face with the results most of the time that we might not even realize they're bullying other people.
So what a great question, Chad. So the thing to remember is that, when there is some feedback that this person is becoming a problem, that you actually see that they're targeting an individual, or you're bleeding through orientees, or people are reluctant, well, I'm going to put you with Phyllis. And then you see the person all of a sudden, clam up like, geez, whatever you do, don't do that. If you're going to pay attention to this, you're going to realize that, again, what they do is in the shadows and not in front of you. Okay. So there's a couple of behaviors that you could look out for. Narcissists or bullies notoriously leapfrog authority. So that if they're supposed to go up a chain of command, middle management, directorship, and then executive, they are notoriously going to jump over middle management because their thinking is, well, what good are you? You're only a middle manager. If you were special like me, then you would be in upper management. So I'm so special. I have to take my concerns and my thoughts and whatever and leapfrog you and go right to executive management because they are special enough to appreciate my specialty. When you have to look out for the people who are truly, charming enough to be predator-like so that when you reprimand them or you restate structure, they're going to tell you exactly what you want to hear. I never had somebody invest the time and energy in me like you did. The other guy before that never did that. I'm really seeing the light. I can do better. Thank you so much for your time and your effort. And then the cycle starts, because a narcissist's behavior will always be cyclical. There will be a bullying episode, a period of remorse, a period of almost excessive niceness. And then there'll be this latent period followed by some period of, increasing irritability, and then another bullying episode. And they cannot sustain the promise to change their ways. Where someone who's chronically uncivil, if you put time, effort, money into them, they may not get it all at once, but they are incrementally going to improve, and they may take a back step, but you will see sustained improvement and a return on your investment. All you get with a narcissist is empty promises and finger pointing as to why everything outside of them is responsible for their inability to be successful.
Wow. Bob, watch for this at home, right? Because this stuff counts at home as well. Your kids are young enough. You can break that cycle in them at this point before they grow up and become you. That's the guy I'm keeping my eye on.
One that's he's a little bit uncivil right now, but he's 3, so we just got to help him develop his vocabulary and his emotional intelligence so that, he gets on the right path, right?
And his breathing.
4 is the insight into teenage years, Bob. 4 is the teenage of toddlerhood. So usually how they're showing you who they are at 4 is
right. Well, the one that just turned 5, I'm really happy with his 4, like what he was as a 4-year-old. I don't have any worries about him. Carter we're going to have to make sure that he focuses that.
Right.
And we're going to play this episode for him when he becomes a teenager. We'll keep this one flag.
I just really want to, I know we're running short on time, but I just really want to appeal to the leaders who are listening here that the 85% of your best performers are watching and praying that you are going to see something and do something, because they are not able to do it themselves, because people are very concerned about being the next target. And remember, this is shadow behavior covered with plausible deniability. And, no matter how good you do at communication, skilled collaboration, authentic leadership, true recognition, if you are not dealing effectively with your disruptive behavior, you're never going to get to that healthy work environment place.
Yeah. Wow. That's such a big piece, right? Because the bully can make an impact negatively relatively quick. The chronic incivility, that's just this lingering thing that, every time they're late to work, somebody else has to pick up for them. Every time they run long on breaks, somebody else has got to pick up the slack. That one doesn't show itself, Phyllis, quite as obvious, I think, but there's an undertone to the chronic incivility if 10 or 15% of your staff is doing that, where the other 85, the ones that you want to be focused on, they know, right? They know that you're the leader is letting this happen in the organization. And
right.
And right. Phyllis, let's just be clear as we come towards the end of this episode. Who was it that was a minute or two late to this one?
Bob, it was you.
I'm keeping an eye on you, Stuart. All right.
I don't want to sell you out from under, Bob, but Chad was 10 minutes early.
I know. That's right. That's why we keep both of us around here, right?
It averages out that we get it right. Okay, so
I'll do better next time, Chad.
Us in our Facebook group where we can keep talking about these conversations because we could go for hours on this. So make sure you're joining us, facebook.com/groups/win-make-give. Now, Phyllis, how do they get a hold of you, follow you, hear more from you if they want to after this episode?
Well, they can log on to my website, which is MFW Consultants, Michael Frank William, mfwconsultants.com. And if they want to reach out to me, all of my contact information is on my website. And if they would like to buy a copy of my book, which outlines in detail, it's a short read, outlined approach to how to handle this, they can go to the store tab on my website, MFW Consultants, and purchase the hard copy of my book on the website, or they can go to Amazon and put in the book, Bringing Shadow Behavior into the Light of Day, Understanding and Effectively Managing Bullying and Incivility in Healthcare, and they can purchase it on Amazon in the Kindle version.
Perfect. And if you didn't catch that because you were driving or whatever it was, it's in the show notes. So just go check the show notes when this episode is over. They will be there for you. Now, Phyllis, last time we were on, we asked you for a charity that we could donate money to for every listen this episode's going to get. And I'm just going to ask you again, same charity, or are we picking a different charity for this episode?
No, it's the same charity. It's the Cohen Children's Medical Center in New Hyde Park, New York, specifically the holistic team.
Well, we appreciate it. We're going to make sure that they get a donation based on every listen this episode gets within its first 30 days. So folks, share it with others. Let them hear the lessons about it. Bob, I'm so glad you were that excited last time to make sure we brought Phyllis back because, wow, she did it again.
I love it. I love it. I mean, these are, some of these things, Phyllis, you're like, what? Today was one of these, like, duh, in a good way, right? You're like, yeah, obviously these are the pillars of what a healthy work environment looks like. Now, if we choose to focus on them and develop them and get rid of the disruptive behavior, right, then we can have a healthy work environment and we can retain our top talent. We can have a place that people want to come work. And I appreciate you coming here and doing this again with us, Phyllis. Thank you.
Invite me back, guys. You're a joy to work with.
Well, we'll just get together and just talk, even if we're not recording an episode. But
Sounds
folks,
good.
until our next episode, as always, do good.